When we reviewed the Volkswagen Passat R-Line, we concluded that even though it was stately and mature, the R-Line package gave it a little bit of a spark that it needed to be a truly exciting vehicle. It looked sharp and it drove well, and it had the sort of features that would allow you to take it to the max on the weekends. Things like the dynamic chassis control, for example, and those big wheels really made it look the part. So it was an easy recommendation for us. If you were looking for a large D-segment saloon that is capable of being both Jekyll and Hyde, that would be a great choice in that segment. But for the Volkswagen Passat Elegance, it's not as easy an equation. For starters, it doesn't have that sharp look-at-me kit. It's got smaller wheels. It's lost some of the look-at-me features within the cabin as well. And so it begs the question, is this even worth considering? And more importantly, on a market that's hot on SUVs, why would you get this over a Volkswagen Tiguan? Well, hopefully in this review we'll be able to answer both of those questions. My name is AIMAN ABDULLAH, this is Malaysian Motoring, and this is the Volkswagen Passat Elegance. So starting at the front, the Passat Elegance wears a slightly more mature, less aggressive face. So you have this full-width chrome grille with this chrome element that goes all the way above the headlights. The headlights themselves are quite intelligent. These are called the Volkswagen IQ lights. They are full LED, replete with scrolling indicators, and perhaps some of the most intricate daytime running lights currently available on the Malaysian market. Underneath you have a reprofiled bumper. This car was facelifted, it was introduced as a facelift, and so you have a reprofiled bumper with this black element here, which is described to look like a dog bone. If your dog is chewing on a bone that looks like that, you might want to figure out where it's from. Going down the side, the biggest difference between this and the Passat R-Line are the wheels. So this is now 1 inch smaller, and they are a darker color as opposed to the bright silver that you get on the R-Line. Now, I don't know if Volkswagen Passenger Cars Malaysia is doing this on purpose, because the R-Line that we drove was white and it had the bright silver alloys, and now this is grey with grey alloys. I think somebody there really likes the monotone look. I personally don't. I would have preferred if this was in a brighter color just to contrast against the body, or conversely, had this car in a different color so it contrasts against the wheels, but whatever. Down the side, it is broadly the same as the R-Line, where you have that very gentle curve to the roofline. You have this relatively uninteresting side, where this car is meant to convey a sense of strength. So you have these sharp body lines, you have the door handles along that body line, you have another crease in the bottom, and it's not meant to be overly complicated or overly fussy. But this roofline is especially noteworthy because it's a very gentle taper for a modern saloon. Also, if you've noticed, the rear doors are quite large because there is a lot of space in the back, but we'll get to that in a moment. Now, down the back, you still have the same sort of IQ light system. So these are full LEDs with a cute animation. When you hit the brakes, it actually changes the design of the taillights a little bit. There's also an unlock and locking animation, so it turns on progressively, so it looks really swish. And you still have scrolling indicators at the back too. Now, compared to the R-Line, the bumper is different here, so you don't get exhaust exits, real or fake, up to you. They just get this sort of black thing. It's almost like they couldn't be bothered to put something or whatever. You also get the Passat script very prominently here, and you've also lost the powertrain designation badging. So before we used to have 280 and 380 TSIs for the Passat because it came in the 1.8 and the 2 litre. Now it's only available as a 2 litre, single state of tune, so they've just completely thrown that away. Also, those badgings were really complicated and fussy, so I'm glad that it is gone. Now, in the boot, you have a decent amount of space actually. You have more than enough room for a weekend away, or in our case, some stuff lying around. You can fold the rear seats 60-40 via the little tabs here. You also have a little shopping bag hook in case you need to hang stuff up. You have a space saver spare wheel under the floor. Now, the R-Line came with a full-size spare wheel, so I think it's weird that this also doesn't come with a full-size spare, but whatever. The tailgate is powered, as I showed you earlier. You just close it by hitting that button. There is no lock button, so you can't lock it from there. And my most favorite feature, of course, is the fact that opening and closing the boot, is done by just flipping the logo. There's something really nice about the fact that that feature is nicely hidden, integrated into the design. It's always a fun thing for me when it comes to Volkswagens. But anyway, enough about the things that I personally enjoy because I'm slightly odd. Let's look at the interior, where there have been some changes with this facelift, and more importantly, we need to talk about whether or not this is a proper Volkswagen. So inside the Passat Elegance, it is a relatively nice place to be. So with the facelift, we got a new infotainment system, and now this is enormous. It's all completely capacitive touch, just like your smartphone, so it's very responsive to use. The interface is also really intelligent. So one of the things that I love about Volkswagen infotainment systems is that everything falls very easily to hand. Nothing is overly complicated. You have a menu button where you have all of the options available to you, and you have a home button where you have everything displayed in a reasonable enough manner where everything that you expect to find is all there. Now, if you've been noticing me swinging my hand, it's because this car comes with gesture control. However, it is notoriously difficult to trigger because it's like, I'm not sure how far away, about there, right? But the problem is, if my hand is already here, I might as well just touch the screen, right? But anyway, perhaps the gesture control is there in order to minimize you touching the screen, because when you do, it leaves 1,001 fingerprints. I don't actually have a cleaning cloth in this car, and I'm starting to regret that because this screen is looking really icky at this point. But anyway, one of the things that I do appreciate is the fact that the air conditioning controls are not included in the infotainment display. So that means that I have actual physical dials for me to adjust my temperature, my fan speed, the direction of the air conditioning, and the recirculation, which I really do appreciate. I hate it whenever I have to jab at a screen in order to change my temperature. Climate control should not be that complicated. But my rant aside, there's a little slot down here where you can put a phone, and it's rubberized too, so if you put a phone that's not going to slide around. You have a USB-C port here to connect to the infotainment system. There's also a USB-C port down here as well, which also connects to the infotainment system. There's a lot of piano black in the center console, so around the infotainment system, all that. It's a lot of piano black, but again, because all the controls are very easy for you to locate, you very rarely sort of miss and accidentally hit the trim. So all the disgusting bits are all in areas where you can clean easily. You have the gear lever down here. I appreciate the fact that it's still a proper gear lever. I understand this is probably electronic, just like every other gear lever these days, but I like the motion. You have the buttons for the start-stop, the front parking sensors, and the rear blind. Yes, this car comes with a rear blind, all available here. You have your electronic parking brake with auto hold function. You have two cup holders here with a little roller shutter in between. There's a little cubby here for reasons I can't quite identify. There's a 12-volt socket, and you have a relatively small center bin, but it's big enough for you to put in a cable for a USB-C and also just stuff your phone down there so that it's completely out of the way. And of course, like every Volkswagen, this is adjustable for height, so you can actually set it to a preferred height, and then you can move this in and out. I quite like it like this because it means that when I sit, I can just sort of put my hand here and lean and just drive along. Great for long distance cruising. Now, when I'm seated like this, then I have all the controls in front of me. I have my cruise control buttons here, my driver assist buttons here, and then the buttons on this side help to control the digital instrument cluster. Volkswagen, actually the Volkswagen Group, makes some of the best digital instrument clusters on the market. They are high refresh rate, the graphics are incredible, they never lag, and all the information that you need is displayed in a way that's very easy for you to kind of put together. And of course, because it's infinitely customizable, you are able to, what do you want from me? Go away. No, oh, there's a voice assistant that I'm not sure how I triggered. Maybe because I said, oh, fuck. So let's try and not do that anymore. So anyway, the digital instrument cluster is very customizable, so you can have all sorts of information on it, like map information, trip information, things like fuel consumption, which is normally how I leave it because I'm cheap. Because of all that customizability, you will end up finding one setup that works for you and you just sort of leave it there. I really appreciate that, and I really love this digital instrument cluster. I feel like there are more car makers, even premium car makers, who can learn a thing or two from the Volkswagen Group. But enough about what's going on here. Let's go and look at the back, because the Passat has a little bit more to reveal there. So in the back of the Passat Elegance, as you can see, I have acres of room. This seat isn't even set up in my driving position because the car has an easy entry and easy exit system, so the electric seat moves out of the way to allow you to get in and out a lot easier, and then when you start the car it goes back into its position. So this is actually in the easy entry position, and even then I have acres of legroom and I have acres of headroom because I'm not particularly tall either. I'm the national average, in case you're wondering, but it's very comfortable to be back here. A notable point, aside from the space, is the fact that these seat bases are actually quite long. So as you can see, this support cushion actually goes all the way to the back of my knees. And as a result, as I'm sat here, I know that over a longer distance, this will be very, very comfortable. Now, notable features back here include 3-zone climate control, so you can actually set the temperature with the buttons down here. There is a little pocket down here where you have a 12-volt socket as well as a USB-C port. You also have speaker grills here, and here you have ambient lighting as well, and the quality back here is exactly the same as it is at the front. So you still have soft touch materials here, you still have some leather here and some nice stitching, and you have a nice place to rest your arm. In the middle you have a center armrest with 3 cup holders in 3 different sizes. So it doesn't matter if you go to a fast food joint and order large or a small, or if you have one of those little coffees, the little coffee cans, it'll fit here quite nicely. Now, like I said, the position here is quite nice. So as you're sat here, you can lean back and it's really comfortable. These headrests are adjustable individually, so you can get it to just the right position. And if you are a tiny little child, you have ISOFIX mounts down here, and you also have these sun blinds as well, to ensure that if there are children back here, they are not overly burdened by the UV rays coming from the outside. Talking about UV rays, Volkswagen vehicles in this country come as standard with tint. So this car is tinted, there's pretty decent UV and heat rejection already, but for added protection, again, you have the sun blinds on the side and the electric sun blind at the rear. This is clearly a very comfortable place to be, and I would imagine that some individuals who want to be chauffeur driven in a D-segment saloon might look at this as a possible option, and that is certainly something that could be considered. But to talk a little bit more about that, let's get into the driver's seat, shall we? So, behind the wheel, the Passat Elegance actually reveals something quite surprising. If you've watched our earlier review of the Passat R-Line, we would have told you that even though the car certainly looks like it's a lot more sporty and a lot more engaging, the reality is that it didn't really feel like the athlete that it was trying to be. In the meantime, this car, on the other hand, has a very different sort of personality. What surprises us about this is that the throttle mapping and ECU in this car appears to be set for a more relaxed, more laid-back driving style. And so the throttle response, for example, is not quite as immediate. It doesn't sort of command the same level of attention and the same level of performance as the R-Line did, even though the power output in both of these cars is the same. You're still running the same 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, the same 7-speed double-clutch automatic gearbox, but somehow in this car it just feels a lot more relaxed, a lot more chilled out, and it invites you to drive in a far more relaxed manner. Now, this is beneficial in a couple of ways. So for starters, when you drive, the car feels, like I said, a lot more laid back. So you tend to accelerate smoother, you tend to take off smoother, and as a result, it sort of has an effect on you, so that when you stop, you also want to stop in a more smooth manner, because you feel like that's sort of what the car's character is all about. But then the other benefit is in terms of fuel economy. We've had this car for about a week. We've done over 1,000 kilometers, 1,064 now as I speak to you, and the tank still hasn't finished yet. We haven't refueled this car once. The average long-term consumption is only 6.9 litres per 100 kilometers, and bear in mind, this has been through a variety of different conditions. We have driven this car through traffic jams, we've driven this car on highways, there have been open roads, and there have been snarls, there have been back roads and so on, and yet this car has performed valiantly throughout. And this, I believe, is down to that throttle mapping and that more relaxed driving experience. What you lack in this car is things like the dynamic chassis control that you get in the Passat R-Line. You also get alloy wheels that are 1 inch smaller, so they absorb bumps a little bit better. The primary ride is a little bit better, but the secondary ride is about the same. And but in terms of safety, for example, you still get things like blind spot monitoring, which is still very helpful. Unfortunately, the active safety in this car is limited to blind spot monitoring, and that's it. There is nothing else going on, which is a bit of a shame given the fact that this car is damn nearly 190,000 ringgit, given the fact that you can get level 2 semi-autonomy in cars that are worth far less than 100,000 ringgit new. The fact that this only comes with blind spot information system is a little bit lackluster. But that said, when you are driving, you can feel where a lot of that money went. You can tell this car is very well engineered because the ride in this car is fantastic. The sound insulation is not that bad. You get very little in terms of wind noise. You do get quite a bit of road roar though, which I believe is also an issue shared with the Passat R-Line. We believe that that was down to the bigger wheels and maybe the tire choice, but we're surprised that even this rim and tire combo is still quite loud, especially when you breach the national speed limit. But in terms of cruising, I believe that this is where this car excels very, very well. And when you're talking about long-term cruising or long-distance cruising, this car is so comfortable. It soaks up bumps and lumps really well, and it tends to settle down very quickly even when it's slightly unsettled through like expansion joints and stuff like that. And so you can imagine that taking this car over a very long distance would be a very thoroughly relaxing affair. Aiding to that is the fact that both the front seats are electric, but the driver's seat comes with a massage function. Now I say massage with inverted commas because it's basically just moving the lumbar support in and out. So it's a very limited kind of massage, but over a longer distance it can help to relieve a little bit of lower back stress. So I imagine that this car would be quite comfy. Talking about driving stress, ergonomics is also very important. As per any Volkswagen, everything falls very easily to hand. It's very easy to find the perfect driving position because the steering wheel adjusts both telescopically and for reach and rake, and all the buttons and switchgear are all very near. I appreciate the fact that even though you get the new 9-inch I believe it's called the Discover Pro system, I can't remember, but even though you get this new touchscreen infotainment system, which is capacitive touch and very easy to use, I appreciate the fact that the HVAC controls are still physical controls, so you still have dials and buttons to adjust the things that you will be adjusting most often. And I also appreciate the fact that the digital instrument cluster in this car is so customizable because you can get all manner of information on here in a view that works best for you. So the thing about this car is, when I reviewed the Passat R-Line, I believe that I ended that review by saying that there's no point looking at the Elegance and you just get the Passat R-Line because it looks better and it's got all that kit, and therefore it is the best Passat that money can buy. But actually I'm starting to waver a little bit. This car has been very impressive over the odd week or so that we've had this, and in my opinion, I firmly believe that if I had a choice to choose a brand new Passat, I think this would be more up my alley. The fact that it's got slightly smaller wheels, which means that I don't have to worry so much when I hit potholes. I do live in PJ, so that is an eminent concern for me. And also the fact that this car's driving experience is a lot more laid back. It invites me to be calmer and more relaxed behind the wheel. And if you're going in and out, driving to and fro from work, getting stuck in traffic and that sort of thing, you want a car that is relaxing. You want a car that isn't taxing. You want a car that lowers your blood pressure, as it were. Although doctors would disagree regarding the effectivity of such a thing. But again, you'd want a car that makes you feel calm. And this car is definitely calm. Is it calmer than the competitors? Well, the Honda Accord is not bad, but Hondas have traditionally suffered from NVH issues. Though that said, we haven't driven the new Honda Accord, so we can't say conclusively. The Toyota Camry is pretty good, but I have a feeling that this car is just a slight touch above. Although this is cheaper and it's slightly more affordable than the Toyota Camry, I believe that it has quite a few things that are going for it that make it a very firm contender in the large family saloon market. But that's been our review of the Volkswagen Passat Elegance. If you enjoyed this review, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe.